Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the NextPlay Spoilercast, the official spoilercast of NextPlay Australia. My name is Brad, and joining me today is Jamie
Hey.
and Berto.
Hello.
In today's episode, we are going to dig deep into our experiences with What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch is a first-person exploration game developed by Giant Sparrow and published by Annapurna Interactive. The game follows the titular character as she returns to her childhood home to relive the past and learn about a series of unfortunate deaths that have plagued generations of her family. So, Jamie, Berto, welcome to the second episode of the NextPlay Spoilercast. Are you excited to talk about What Remains of Edith Finch?
Very much so.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So, I completed my first playthrough of Edith Finch last week. If you want to watch the full playthrough, that is on our YouTube channel. You guys recently replayed the game. I don't know. Did you guys play through the game when it first came out or somewhat recently before your latest playthrough? And did your feelings of the game change at all in your most recent playthrough compared to your first playthrough of the game? We'll start with you, Jamie.
I think from memory, I did play this at launch because I was a big fan of Giant Sparrow's first game, Unfinished Swan, which I have done articles about in the past, and there's a nice little Easter egg to that, which we'll touch on a little bit later on with this. But I think I've played this game probably about 4 occasions, I think, now. And I think yeah, each time you're left with like different feelings or you notice something a little bit different. And I think like this was the first time going into this experience where I had been a father. So we're going to touch on certain deaths as we go through, but yeah, the main one that always stuck with me sort of just hit that little extra in terms of like hardness, if that makes sense. So um I think that's what I love about this game so much is that you can venture through it because there are so many different scenes and characters that you can just appreciate different aspects each time.
Yeah. Berto, what about you?
I've only played it twice. I looked back on my Instagram because I posted it when I first played it. So it was 2020. And it was released 2017, so nowhere near, really. Or if you look at time, it's almost right in the middle in a way, but not really.
Mm,
So it's been 5 years, which is insane. And my feelings have evolved a lot. Obviously, I've had a lot of life since then.
yeah.
I also have children, which impacted the story a little bit more than what I expected. I usually never get emotional in video games, but even this one, after playing for 5 years, even knowing what I was about to go through, I was like, "Whoa!" It hit a little different. But yeah, we'll go through those details as we talk through it.
Mm. All right. So let's begin by first going through the deaths of each member of the Finch family. There are many fan theories, as many of the deaths in the game are quite abstract, but others are more straightforward. So we will just touch on what is presented in the game and then also speculate about what deaths could mean or what might have happened outside of the stories that Edith reads. So the first death of the game is Odin. So he drowned attempting to move the Finch house by boat from Norway to America to escape the family curse. So this is, I think, the only death where we don't have any sort of gameplay to play through with this.
Mm.
So there's not much to talk about. Um, we will touch on the family curse later in the episode, obviously, because that is a probably the central theme of everyone dying. So we'll move straight through to Molly Finch, who is the first family member we experience dying as we play through her. So Molly Finch is the daughter of Sven and Edie and is sent to bed without dinner by her mother and passes away after eating an entire tube of toothpaste and berries from a tree outside her window. As the player, we see the poison take effect as we turn into various animals, including a cat, an owl, a shark, and a large tentacled monster. So, this being the first, like, I guess, surreal aspect that we've seen in the game as we play through it, I was like, what is going on? Why am I a cat? Like, what is happening? Did the, I've seen speculation like, did Molly actually jump out the window? Did she literally just poison and die in her room? Does anyone have any thoughts on Molly's story?
I think I would. I take it at least. It leans into the outlandish nature of how she passes away, and at least what we play as the player.
Mm,
I have always sort of considered it's the berries that she's gone and eaten were part of reality. That's what we actually see her eating the berries, and then the rest of it was sort of this imagination, as you said, the poison's taken hold, there's some hallucinations happening, and I think they probably, again, it's all subjective, and I think the devs have left it all up in the air with a lot of these stories just for people to sort of have fun and try to piece together what is real and what isn't. But that's my interpretation, is that it's the berries that ended up doing her in, and they probably ended up finding her in the room the next day.
yeah. Berto, what did you think of Molly's sequence?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic introduction to what you're about to engage in from a storytelling point of view. I
Mm,
was like you, um, could not comprehend what I was doing. I was like, what is this? This game is not what I expected it to be. I still remember the very first time I played it. Um,
mm,
with regards to the death itself specifically, I would say that the berries were the ones. Although the first time I played it, I feel like she jumped out the window, but then that didn't make any sense. And so
yeah.
replaying it, even the tonal structure of it after she eats the berry, I feel like the room even gets darker, almost like it's taken a hold of her in a way.
Mm,
Um, but just from a gameplay point of view, to just say, "Oh yeah, you're a cat. Oh yeah, you're a shark. Oh yeah, you're a owl," and the way he made it work, I just thought it was quite spectacular. I was like,
mm.
"Yeah, we're in for a treat. This isn't it." I don't know how you felt, Brad, when you were going through all that.
I was honestly, I was a little confused. Like, I was like, wait, what is happening? Like, going into this game, I had not read a single synopsis. I didn't know it was about a family with a series of deaths. I literally knew nothing about this
Mm,
game. I went into it literally blank. I had no prior understanding of anything. So, yeah, like I said in my playthrough, like getting into this game, I didn't know what to expect. And like I knew it was a walking simulator, but I didn't know how I don't know how impactful the gameplay, while it's not groundbreaking, it does like really coincide with the storytelling very well.
mm,
Like I don't know how to explain it more than that. Like the gameplay's vastly different for each character, right? And I think the issues or like traumas that these characters are going through, it like presents those traumas in a almost a sophisticated way, like in relation to what they're dealing through. So, I mean, the next character will talk about in a minute, which was probably one of my favorite presentations of a story. But does anyone have anything further about Molly?
I just want to touch on what I love with this game is like they introduce all these different gameplay mechanics throughout the entire experience, and this is probably one of the ones that goes more sort of over the top with some of the
Yeah,
different things that you can actually do. But like it assigns them so well that you never sit there questioning what you're meant to do or going through multiple tutorials every time. You just get it and you get in and you understand exactly what you're meant to do. And like even here with the gameplay here, I love the little subtleties of moving through the text and the text moving
yeah.
as you're going through. I just think it's like beautifully done. And yeah, just the way that the gameplay is very simple to just understand, get in, get out, and you never feel like any of them were a slog to actually get through. I think that's
Mm.
really outstanding.
It feels quite natural, and like it is a testament to the game design, with how intuitive the mechanics are. Like, yeah. All right. So next, we learn the story of the most famous Finch child star, Barbara Finch. This sequence is told by a published comic book, making it probably one of the most ambiguous deaths of them all. Essentially, Barbara hears of the Hookman killer who is terrorizing the town. She then hears her brother Walter yelling in distress in his room and goes up to find him missing. At this point, she is cornered by the Hookman killer, but she is able to escape through a secret passage and gets the edge on the Hookman, who ends up falling down from the staircase onto the ground floor. The Hookman and his body disappears before the doorbell rings, a surprise party for her 16th birthday, full of masked, cannibalistic hoodlums, leaving only her ear behind. So, as I was saying before, this was probably one of my favorite presented gameplays. It
Mm.
you I think all of it was told through the comic book, as in you were playing through the different panels of the comic book. And yeah, it's I didn't touch on this just before, but her boyfriend does go missing, I think. So I think some could imply that he killed her too. Um, Birdo, do you
Mm.
have any theories on what might have actually happened to Barbara?
Yeah, this is like so the initial the way that a story is told quite fantastical, right? It kind of blurs the line with what is real and what isn't real. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
this for me was such a combination of reality because obviously you're going through the house within a comic book style that you just went through the house moments earlier within the game, and I didn't really even know what was real or not initially. I was like, "What is this? Like, what are we doing here?" Um, I think because she is the most famous one out of them all, I always found it quite odd that there was like this shrine of her success, and her room was quite like untouched and everything like that. I always found that to be eerie and
Mm.
strange, and that's when I realized that the house itself was kind of like, you know, not normal. And
No.
eventually we find out it's not normal house. But as for her death and everything like that, I mean, I like the suspense. I like the horror aspect. I love the presentation. I don't really have very many theories around it. I just found it quite to be odd that you would celebrate it this way, in a way, like memorialize someone's death in this way. It's kind of twisted, but yeah.
Well, it is like an outlier in terms of the rest of the stories, because every other story is a handwritten note, a letter, like some sort of other non fictional document. when
Mm.
this comic book is like it's presented in a way that it's like almost it doesn't feel real. So then like
Mm.
what actually happened? Like it's
Yeah.
the only thing where you could probably assume that like this was either taken out of proportion. Like it's a comic book. Like how many comic books are like based on real life? Like not many. Jamie, what do you think of Barbara?
I think this was probably one of the ones where I like off the top of my head, I couldn't remember a bunch about this aside from the visual storytelling of this story. But I really loved it replaying it through on this occasion. And the comic book visuals are fantastic. I love those. And as Berto
Yeah.
was saying, being able to see the house in such a distinct style. And I love the fact that like in the book, you're told, oh, you know, if you twist the music box enough, you're going to get a key, and that's telling the player, oh, you should try doing this when you're finished with the story, and it just
Yeah.
subtly tells the player and gives direction of what you should do next. I think that's expertly done. That's probably a lot. I know it's probably jumping a little bit, but in terms of the house design itself and how it sort of just goes back on itself, and you can enter different areas, and how everything is just sort
Mm.
of built together. Or like you'll open up a window, now there's a lockbox, now you're opening a door, and then you're over to this new it's eerie like Birdo said, but um, it's also absolutely gorgeous. And in terms of just the intricacies of each room, it is a shrine to the personality of the characters themselves, which is just, once again, if you just spend enough time in each room, you know who they are and what they loved before you even start reading about them, which I
Yeah.
really love. But yeah, the visual style of this section is fantastic. As you said, it's very much an outlier in terms of how it's presented. And in terms of theories of what happened, yeah, again, I think this is another one of those, and it's throughout most of them where you hear sprinkles of reality throughout it. Like I feel like the police calling and doing that warning of like be on the look for the hook man and all that sort of stuff. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that was a legitimate. Maybe someone was doing weird stuff, and like I think it's also traumatic coming over here. And I think the brother was hiding under the bed the entire time with whatever happened, but
Yeah.
never voiced it to anyone what had actually happened. And yeah, the even the ear stuff is like super brutal compared to all the rest. Like I just feel like this one's really just sort of sadistic in a way, and how it's presented and what it could mean. So it's definitely one of my favorite ones, though. I absolutely love going through it.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed this like the most. Well, maybe top 3. Next, we had one of the shortest stories in the game. One of Sven and Edie's sons, Calvin, is playing on the swing with his brother Sam before being called to dinner by Edie. Calvin, who is adamant of swinging his swing all the way around the tree branch, unfortunately achieves this and launches himself into the ocean. This was another death I didn't really know how to take. Like, is that all that happened? Like, he just swung all the way around and launched into the ocean? I feel like there was something more uh on the
I think
nose. I don't know.
I think they mentioned like he got sort of. This is sort of the ones where I feel like it's almost completely realistic in this one, because the brother does sort of touch on that he got his wish, but then like the breeze hit at that exact time while he was doing it, and that's what sent him over, and like it just went the hell off in the end. Yeah, so I think this one's probably mostly real, personally.
I think
Yeah.
it's the thing, the and as we touch each story element, it's about the fantastical in the way that it's being sold, right? So, like when we get to the great grandmother story, Edie, um, and we'll talk a lot about her, I'm assuming, but like I think it did happen, but I think it's the way that it's been like, I hate saying the word, but almost celebrated in a way. Like,
Yeah.
he wanted to go around, and they got the helmet there, like a rocket ship or anything like that. But like at the end of the day, I think it's just an accident, and it's like everything's being sold as something more profound, and
So
yeah.
I know, like, we're only not even halfway through the characters, but something I noticed during my playthrough was a lot of the characters died doing what they love. You've got the
Okay.
baby
Yeah.
playing with ducks in the bathtub. Um, Sam hunting. He loved hunting. Um, Barbara, she got to live her fantasy of um, getting her scream back or whatever she wanted. Um, yeah, from like Milton, I know we don't see him die. I don't want to touch on all the characters we haven't spoken about, but there seems to be some sort of pattern here, which I think I'll come back to later on. But let's go through probably the most shocking death, or yeah. So it is Gus. Sorry, not Gus, Gregory, the baby. Gregory is the son of Sam and Kay, who drowns in a bathtub during bath time. During this particular bath, Kay is called over the phone by Sam multiple times, leaving Gregory unsupervised. Kay does drain the bathtub, but Gregory accidentally turns the water back on using his toys. And it's much later that Sam and Kay do get a divorce, and it's assumed that this was probably the main reason for it. So I think I was visibly uncomfortable playing this part. As soon as the bath got drawn, I was like, oh no, oh no. We've seen every other character die. This isn't going to be any different, is it? Um, I did, even though, like, obviously, watching a baby die or like causing a baby to die isn't like pleasant, but I think they presented this scene in a very uh I don't know. It was presented tastefully, I would say. The like kind of classical music playing the entire time through the scene, um playing with the toys and the ducks all like circling around. It did feel like the baby was just having fun, right? Like it wasn't,
Mm.
there wasn't nothing sinister behind what was taking place on screen. But I would like to know your thoughts on this scene, Jamie. Like you two are both fathers, so like I probably don't have the same perspective as you guys.
So even before I was a father, this one was always the one that I felt hit me very hard. But I think now, with a fresh newborn on my side, it did hit that extra of like, you can't do anything. It's always going to happen no matter what. But when you talk about the tastefulness of it all, I've always sort of appreciated the way that they show it through his eyes. And I think that's the only way
Mm.
you could really do it in that tasteful way, is that like this kid has no idea what's happening. He's just in his own wonderland that he's created within his own imagination. And it is that it leans into the outlandishness because the actual reality of it is absolutely fucking horrifying. And you can understand why, the parents ended up separating and everything following this. But the way they picture it, that he's just playing with these toys, he doesn't know what's happening, he's just enjoying the innocence that he has being a child of that age. And I think it is just, it's incredibly profound. And I think this is like something that I remember the missus had seen me play a couple of times on my previous playthroughs, and she was, bawling her eyes out of it and just like pointing out it's just horrible parenting from the parents in general. Like as we're seeing on screen, of like Now, obviously, things are happening in reality, but in his mind, he's just swimming with his toys in his own little magical wonderland that he's created. And like I said, when you look at it from that way, like it is just it's memorable for that reason. But yeah,
Mm.
if you presented it any other way, like the way that they're able to get away with this without somehow it being banned, is sort of testament to how tastefully they handled it.
Yeah. Berto, what about you?
Yeah, when I first played the game, this is the one that stood out for me, next to Lewis, got the cannery
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yep. So those two for me were the reasons why I decided this game is a I guess a 10 out of 10 in my eyes. Like when it comes to how it's presented, as you say, tastefully, unbelievable how they did this. Like I've never encountered anything. The thing that I hated the most about this, funnily enough, is the controls. I hated
Yeah.
it. I think sometimes even the controls took away from that experience, because if you had a nice clean run and you knew exactly what to do and how to get things, I always found it quite odd this time around because I got the trophy for it. Get the trophy of all the letters on the side of the bathtub of the baby that's about to die. I was like, okay, let's do that. Like, I think the subject matter is beyond deep. Um, as a dad, did it affect me? Well, I just look at her as being really effing stupid. Um, I think it's just dumb. You don't do things like that. But I love the way that it's presented, and Jamie touched on pretty much all the points that I wanted to add. Like just the way that it's innocent in a way, and we all know what's going to happen. That's the worst part. We all know
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the end.
Mm.
But yeah, the presentation, music wise, it's such a. I would have loved to have seen how they came up with this idea, this concept, and actually
Mhm.
executed it so well. And it's such a, yeah, it's such a great narrative choice the way they did this.
It's
Yeah.
it's incredibly artistic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Babies are like so pure, and like it encapsulates that perfectly through both the gameplay and narratively how Gregory's story plays out. Next is Gus. In Gus's story, we play as Gus on the day of Sam's remarriage following his divorce from his mother, Kay. Us, as the player, must fly a kite on the beach at the wedding into the dialogue scattered throughout the scenery. As a storm begins to brew, the wedding party moves inside a nearby tent, which gives way at a point and presumably strikes Gus, killing him. So, Sam and Kay, mother and father of the year, obviously. Yeah, I actually don't have too much of an opinion on this one. This one feels pretty straightforward. Like, Gus was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, obviously. Yeah. Any thoughts on this, Berto or Jamie?
yeah. I think the replay value of this, right? So, like, obviously, you've just experienced something quite traumatic in a sense, and then all of a sudden, I think this is like a palate cleanser, kind of like bring you back down to earth. Obviously, it's not as visually descriptive of what happens, but it's very simple, very basic, little poem. Like I think it's there to kind of break up that initial shock in a way
Of the last
um,
story?
of the
Yeah.
last story. Yeah,
Yeah.
like this is bad, but you
It's
just
not
know
a
it's pretty
baby
bad.
drowning in a bathtub, bad.
No, no. I love the way that the kite runs through um, the
The
words
text,
and they all
yeah.
come out. Yeah, I love that visual style. I've always, in fact, the one thing that I have noticed in the second playthrough is the way that the subtitles are placed throughout the game is so well made. Like,
Mm.
geez, they did such a good job of it. I
It
didn't really
feels
recognize it the first time.
intentional. The
Yes,
placements.
100%. I think that's a good way to look at it. As for his death, I mean, he was out there flying a kite in a storm. I mean, it's not good. You shouldn't be outside at all. But again, the parents, mother and father of the year, as you said.
It's not their fault. There's a curse, allegedly.
Or so they say. Yeah.
Yes. Jamie, how did you feel about Gus's story?
Well, two things I want to touch on. Which, one of you mentioned it earlier about the stupidity. Berto with the buff. I think I'm going to touch on that probably later on when we start discussing the curse. Obviously, that leaned into it heavily. You know, the parents not bringing him in, and him just staying out there despite the entire storm that was happening all around him. Um, Stupidity comes up quite a lot in this, in my opinion, of the curse.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to touch on, because this is, as you said, it's a nice palate cleanse in between some of them. I just don't want to say nice because it still is a child dying, but just it's like more just like fun gameplay, and it looks straightforward, at least for me, in terms of what happened. It was just neglectful parenting. And a child that didn't really understand the extent of what was happening around him at the time, and then that occurs. But the other thing I wanted to touch on is once, as Berto was bringing up, how they put the subtitles and the text, and how the text itself is interactive, not only with the gameplay, but the world is absolutely stunning. Like,
Mm.
it's never in your face, it's never obtuse, it's always very natural. And
Mm.
I noted down in one of my notes, I think it's Walter's death, where it's like during it he's like using a hammer, and you see the text
Mm.
is like sort of shaking as you're using the hammer, and it's just like
Yeah.
Yeah.
the little details of that like I didn't even pick up on that on my previous playthroughs, but it's just like
Mm.
how it's done. Like I said, it's so artistic, and it's just like everything is deliberate, everything is just so precise. And yeah, it never is in your face. Sometimes I think Mikey has said on the previous podcast he hates subtitles, but like this game I feel like would lose something without them, because they do feel very distinct to each character that you're exploring at the time. So yeah, I think they're done fantastically.
I would almost consider this game a visual novel. So I'd
Yeah.
it wouldn't be as impactful if there weren't subtitles. I think that just brings the essence or the spirit of the game out, and like what aesthetic or like type of storytelling they're trying to achieve. It just works with these subtitles placed in the world. Next, we have Milton. So Milton is Edith's older brother, and he's a special character because we don't see any evidence of his death anywhere. So Edith picks up a flip book animating a story titled Milton Finch and the Magic Paintbrush. Towards the end of the book, we see Milton use the brush to paint a black door with a gold knob, and as he goes through it and closes the door, the flip book ends. It's come out later in a Reddit AMA that Milton is a character in Giant Sparrow's previous game, The Unfinished Swan. He is. I haven't played that game. Apparently, he is the king. Jamie, you have played that game. Do like how is this just like a Easter egg they've thought of later, or do you see resemblance or some connection there?
So, firstly, I still remember when I first played this. As I said, I was a fan of Unfinished Swan, which is why I wanted to play this as early as I could. And yeah, you get the music that's featured in that scenario is from Unfinished Swan.
Oh,
Some of the
okay.
paintings that are all around are like some of the main key locations that you visit throughout that experience as well. And the whole motif of like, for those that don't know what Unfinished Swan is, it's like you're this blank palette and you throw like paintballs around and you create the world. So it leans exactly into what this character is, the gold and black motif as well. So as soon as this hit, I got emotional when I first played this because like of that tie back, and like it was something I was completely unexpecting. And whenever I bring up Unfinished Swan, a lot of people just don't know what that is. It wasn't a massive game, but I absolutely adored it. I got those vibes straight away, and I think it's such a cool Easter egg that you feel like, because that game wasn't as massive as it probably, well, I wish it was, that you felt like you were in on something. Like some people would just go and have that experience and go, "Oh, something must have happened there." But I felt like particularly special as being someone that loved that game, and coming into this, it hit so much harder for me. So I absolutely loved that. And yeah, I saw that AMA you were talking about with the devs saying that he was the king. And that's a character in there. And I believe from memory, I think your character that you play as is meant to be sort of the child of the king within the game. But don't
Okay.
quote me on that. I could be wrong. So there's like theories that I had seen of like, did Milton sort of just run away? Did he go and have
Mm.
his own life somewhere else? And the only things that Unfinished Swan are touching on are the paintings that we see. And maybe he went off and lived his own life, devoid of having to worry about the curse or his family or anything. It's really interesting. Like I said, there's so many different theories that could attest to that. So the gameplay you're seeing now, there's some paintings around, and they are some of the big scenes throughout Unfinished Swan. So, and yeah, once that music hit for me, it was just like, oh my god, this is this is all tying back in, and it was like it's all connected. But yeah, this one really, like, I can understand people, it maybe not hitting as hard if you haven't played that, but yeah, play that game if you can. So good.
So is
The
it
flip
all
the flip
connected but
book.
not connected? So what you're
It
saying?
I'd say it's definitely connected. Like
mm,
the fact that they're literally playing the soundtrack from Unfinished Swan during that scene, it leans into, is Unfinished Swan just another one of the outlandish stories, but just sort of built upon to be its own full experience. So it's only like an hour and a half, 2 hour game. It's not. It's probably around the same length as What Remains of Edith Finch. But the main gameplay mechanic is literally just you paint the world, and
Yeah,
that helps you traverse.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's all tied together. But then again, it's like how much of the outlandish nature of these stories are actually reality or not. So I think it plays into that, and that's how it connects.
but even in reality, like almost every photo of him has a crown on, which like
Mhm.
that seems more than an Easter egg. Like it does feel like a true connection.
Yeah, yeah, no, I believe so.
All right, so next, I think we did skip over him because this was earlier in the game than Gus and Milton. Walter. After the death of his sister, Barbara, Walter spends the next 30 years of his life locked in a basement, eating almost solely tins of peaches, hearing strange rumbles every day of his life. Unfortunately for him, the rumbling he'd heard every day was a train running beneath his bunker. One day after the rumbling had stopped for about a week, he decides to go outside, and after a few seconds of freedom, he gets hit by a train. How literal did you guys take this? Do you believe that he was actually hit by a train?
Yeah. I don't know why, but yeah.
I don't. Because, like, when you go down there as Edith, you go outside of the tunnel and, like, the beach is literally right there. So I don't know,
Mm.
like, how would a train be running right along a beach? Like, ah, it, yeah, I don't know.
I I lean to what Brad's saying, but of course it is subjective. This is just piggybacking off. This is one of the ones where I did look up to see what other people thought about it, because um the rumbles and everything indicate, oh, it must be a train going overhead. But the theory I saw of someone saying that was his inner turmoil. That was him just every day. The fact that his brother had passed away and everything he had seen, he just wanted to keep himself locked up, and those rumbles are that inner turmoil keeping him down there. And then yeah, you come out with Edith, and you see that it's not actually connected the train line anymore. Like you could just see it's just straight to the depths of the water, I believe. Like it's
Yeah.
So
been
then
inactive for such a long time. So this the
I
theory
think,
I saw was that he just like finally got the courage to come out, and he's just like walked off the cliff or some shit. But it could
well,
be either
yeah,
way.
I think perhaps suicide in a way. Um, he spent so long, how long, 30 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Something like that.
he was working on that train set, which is what you look at if you look behind, like when you're exploring, it's behind him because it's such a small, confined space. It's almost impossible to miss. So there is that theory that I had was like the light was him finally deciding, I'm out. I've lived. I don't need to live anymore. Because that's how it kind of like, dramatically come, we're seeing it now where he's saying like, I just wanted a day,
Mm.
a moment, a second or whatever. And maybe that's the manifestation of his mind. He assumed that sound that could have been a mental thing was a train. And so he built a train, and he's built a train in his mind so much. And a lot of the issues that I noticed, not issues, but I noticed the themes, right, that are going through all of them is all of them have fantastic minds. Like they all dream a lot, you know? I was a
Mm.
rabbit, I was a octopus, I was a king, I went to a portal, now I'm in a different video game. like
Yeah.
and now there's a train, like again, it's so, yeah, you don't know what's real or not.
Oh,
Mm.
like he was down there for 30 years. No sunlight at all. No one to talk to. Eating peaches out of a can for 30 years every day. I reckon he went insane. Like, I honestly think. And even if he wasn't, if he went outside for the first time, no sunlight for 30 years, I think that would be enough to kill him right there. Like, he would already be massively sick from hiding in that bunker for 30 years. That's a goddamn long time to be secluded away. Like, if that wouldn't break you mentally, like, then I don't know what would. So I'm more on the side that it isn't literal, only because he had like some kind of fascination with trains, which also leads into my argument that everyone died doing something they loved. So yeah, I actually like there wasn't much gameplay in terms of this story, but I liked I don't know, I just liked the idea of I don't know, like just not hearing rumbling for a week and then he decides to go outside. Also, if it was a train, why would no trains go past for a whole week? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I will keep rambling
Yeah.
about this until it makes sense. So I'm gonna move on to the next character now. Sam takes his only living daughter, Dawn, on a hunting trip. Dawn reluctantly hunts the deer with her father before he is ironically knocked off a cliff by a deer he thinks he has killed. I thought this was funny and I thought Sam deserved it. I do. I think his Dawn was obviously not comfortable with hunting at all. And he was
Mm.
like, "Oh yeah, it's all right. Like we'll do this. It's fine. Like you lost your other two kids for neglect and now you're just like not giving Dawn the time of day. Sorry. You deserve to get kicked off that cliff." I did gasp though when it happened because I wasn't expecting it. Um Beto, what did you think of this hunting
You know,
sequence?
gameplay wise, I hated this one the most,
I
but
did. I got
visually,
stuck.
I stuck. Yeah, I forgot. After 5 years, I was like, "Oh yeah, the bird," and then I was like, "Oh, hold on, it's not the bird." Like I thought I was smart and then I was dumb. So from a gameplay perspective, they really don't give you many hints, and but I love the way that it's visually presented. Like, when you take a picture, she you see her hand move it out, like she's pulling all the photos that you're taking as historical
Mm.
fact. Um, Story wise, short and sweet, really. Like, he made a mistake, shouldn't have done it, cost him his life. Oh dear, like, pun intended. Like, I just think it's yeah, yeah. From a storytelling point of view, I do like the idea, but gameplay wise, very finicky, a bit frustrating.
Yeah, it was definitely my least favorite gameplay wise because, as you can see, I do like just keep taking photos of the same 5 things for the next 5 minutes
It's the same rock.
until I figure out the thing that progresses the story. Um, there we go. All right, Jamie, what did you think of Sam's story?
Yeah, I think this is another one of those just palate cleanser type ones where it's in there, like I said, it's got that sort of powerful ending where, she didn't want to be there at all and he wasn't really paying any attention and then whoop, off he goes. So that sort of even states this might be one of the more non outlandish ones where it seems pretty
Mm,
straightforward what occurred in the end. Obviously, if you look at it from the playable character's viewpoint, she's got the photos that you actually took. So she's got those physical, visual evidence of what occurred during that series of events. Um, but yeah, this one was probably one of the more least favorite ones for me, just because like there's so many more memorable ones where I tend to even forget that this one is in there,
Mm.
just because of how quick in and out it is. He's about to go off, but yeah, um, I think it is that just sort of nice one in between because I think this is near the end before we end up hitting Lewis, right? Or
Yeah.
along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think it's just a nice sort of palate cleanser type thing. But yeah, probably one of my least favorites, I'd say.
Mm. All right, now we're probably going to go to probably the most abstract ones, and I think the last main playable story, and that is Lewis's.
mm,
So Lewis is the older brother to Milton and Edith, and he had one of the most peculiar death stories. His death was told through a letter by his psychiatrist. And we start Lewis's story during his shift at the fish cannery, where we start chopping up fish before slowly being transported into. I mean, I guess we just he kind of loses touch with reality as he's still processing and beheading these uh, fish. So it does like really like I was this might have been my favorite as like I can't do two things at once, so me trying to move my character and chop the fish at the same time, I was all over the place, but I got there in the end. I really enjoyed the gameplay in this though, and it does like continuing the chopping of the fish throughout this entire story leading up to what happens at the end of the story, which I guess I can say. It's a spoiler cast. He does walk up to an altar or something where it's kind of like a throne, but like a guillotine as well. And it's implied that his head gets chopped off. Um, but I like that chopping the fish also has impact in the world that we're traversing inside his mind too. Like, um, there'll be like a door to open and then the door will open as the fish's head gets chopped off or something. Um yeah, I'd really like to know your thoughts on this story, Jamie.
I think what I love most about the gameplay mechanic of the cutting of the fish, as you know, as we're seeing by the gameplay on screen here, the imaginary world taking over to the point where you don't even end up really seeing the fish. You're just doing it. You're doing
Yeah.
exactly what Lewis is doing.
Yeah.
You're doing the monotony whilst exploring this imaginary world. So you embody the character perfectly because yeah, you're barely seeing what you're doing at one point. You're just one with what the meaningless task that you're doing as you're more focused on the imaginary world all around you that he's created. And like we've all had shitty jobs where we've done the same shit over and over and over, and it just becomes like second nature, but you're not really even thinking about it. And
Mm.
that's literally what's happened here. And it's extremely powerful, honestly. Like the music throughout it is also so lovely, and it's so 180 to what the subject matter is happening on screen. Like we're beheading fish and we're all heading to an ending that we all know is going to be absolutely just brutal. But it's
Mm.
like so uplifting and upbeat, and like he just wants to explore and have his own world where people like appreciate him. But he's just, you know, he's a grunt worker doing just a monotonous job. And yeah, the way it's handled, yeah, I'm with you, Brad. It's definitely one of my favorites, and I think I even appreciate it probably more on this playthrough than I have on previous ones. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. I really love what it's in the entire story with the mental health aspect, and yeah, I agree with you. It seems like he just sort of gets so lost in this imaginary world that he's created that it's almost like he commits suicide, but he doesn't even realize that he has done it within reality because he's so just intrinsically invested in this world that he's created mentally. Extremely powerful.
Yeah. Berto, what about you?
Yeah, it's the best part of the game, in my opinion. This is the pinnacle of their narrative, the way that they presented it, almost like even an evolution of video games in a way. How it starts off as a top down Pac Man style game in the corner, and then it's expanded itself to 3D isometric view, then genuinely 3D. So it's like that evolution on the left as the game, as the screen progresses and takes and consumes you. It's worth noting as we're talking now, and I think a lot about it, the mental health aspect of all these characters, right? Always come up with these fantastical ideas of how they feel, what they think, and how they're going. And he makes a clear decision to separate his mind from his body, right?
Mm.
Because he couldn't handle it anymore. And when you think about it in that aspect, all these people, the Finches, seem to have that, in my opinion. Now that I'm starting to talk to you two about it, I'm starting to think maybe mental health is actually the real thing. Maybe that's the actual burden.
Possibly. Possibly.
Um, so gameplay point of view, awesome. Like, yeah, at first I didn't quite get it. I do remember it. As I was playing, I was like, "Is this the fish one?" And then as it happened, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome. I love it." Um, and again, just the way that it's done, it's so original. I've never played anything like it, and I think this is probably the reason why I kept winning awards. Was ultimately, not just this part, but the sum of everything all put together. This is just like, how original is this to come up with something like this?
And it really, like, this is like basically the last 15 to 20 minutes of the game. And like to end it on this, like, well, it's not the end, but like to end it as like strong as this, like, it does help create a lasting impression of your total experience as well. Because I
Mm.
feel like, yeah, as you said, almost everyone has like lost touch of reality a bit in their deaths. And like, I feel like this is the most out of touch. And it is the last one. So, not sure if the curse is related to that, which we are going to talk about very soon. I know we keep mentioning it, but it is just around the corner. But yeah, really strong 10 minutes of gameplay there. Next up, we have another unique character, one that didn't seemingly die from the curse, or did she? Edie, the great grandmother that literally watched her whole family die. She died of old age. And yeah, I don't think it's ever really like the last depiction of her. We see her having dinner with Edie and her mother. Sorry, Edith and her mother. And Edie argues with Dawn about whether or not they should leave the house because they are leaving. And then Dawn kind of like says, "You shouldn't be mixing your pills with your alcohol, blah, blah, blah." And like the last shot of Edie that we see is us driving away from the house, and you can just see her standing there alone. And that, I don't think that was meant to be as impactful as it was, but it did hit me quite a bit. Um, because it's sad. Like she's watched all these people die around her, and now she's literally going to be alone by herself in that giant house full of ghosts, you could say.
Mm.
Jamie, what do you think of Edie as a character, and how? I don't know if you believe in the family's curse, but like, was her curse watching everyone die?
Um, if I'm not mistaken, because I did play it a couple of weeks ago, Edie is the one that has put together most of the rooms, right? Like she is the one that kept the
Yes.
stories of the family alive.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
basically immortalized these individuals in their own sealed off tombs.
Yeah.
Um, it is very impactful, and I do sort of lean into, as we said beforehand, of the mixing the pills. That's what I think in my mind, in my interpretation. I think that's what's so fantastic about this game. Like just hearing all your opinions of the different deaths and what you think it is and what it could be. I've never gone this in depth into it with anyone before, so to hear so many different and interesting stories is just awesome, really. And that's I feel for Edie. I feel like that night she's mixed the pills, maybe had a bit too much alcohol because of everything that was happening. The fact that they went off and left her all alone, and that may have been the last time she was ever seen by another person before she was found dead. It's extremely dark and it's extremely sad that this woman who spent almost her entire life trying to keep the personification of all these individuals alive within their own rooms within this house is then left alone with these sealed off rooms to just pass away on her own. It's extremely sad. So I can understand why it definitely hit you.
Mm.
When we do touch on the curse, I will give my opinion on that. But yeah,
Okay.
this one is very powerful.
Beto, how do you feel about Edie?
I think this one annoyed me the most because it I wanted to know more, and
Mm.
it's taken away from you quite quickly. Um, yeah, I think this is the one with the house and the fog, right? With the lake. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
this is the beginning of the dare I say the bullshit in a way, like the dramatic words, the way things are painted colorfully, like the way she is so descriptive, like yeah, very dramatic. I think that's the best way to explain it. I don't like how we don't know, but that's the point. We're not meant to know,
Mm.
right?
No.
And that interpretation's meant for us to kind of figure out what it is that it means and what it means altogether. As for her death, I think this is the way it was meant to be, in a way. Like every death that happened in this game has always been influenced, in my opinion, by her. Um, you call it a walk-in tombs or whatever you said, Jim. I thought that was quite funny, but I think it's also like it's like any tomb, really. The way that she's positioned everything, the way that she's created everything, I think she's messed up the legacy of each person by introducing her own perspective on it. And
Mm.
I think now that I am a little bit more leaning towards mental health being the actual issue, the curse is mental health. I think
Yeah.
this kind of describes it. Like there probably was a point in time in which the lake had regressed, the water had regressed so much that she could go out there. But to say that she saw all these things and everything else, like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't find it to be true at all. I find it just to be convenient for her own truth.
Yeah. Like, I can't remember what part of the story like this was like, but she was 93 when she died, so maybe like there's a lot that she's misremembering, or I don't know. Like, obviously, Edie had been through a lot in her life, and yeah, there actually are instances where the deaths are on her, like Molly, for example. Um, she told Molly, sorry, she sent Molly to bed without dinner, so um, there is that. um, Next up, just we didn't really get anything in terms of gameplay here, but Dawn, Edith's mother, did pass away due to an illness that I think she did overcome, and then she got into remission. And sorry, but then it came back again and took her. This definitely, particularly, like, I almost cried in that scene because my mother got sick 2 years ago, and she's got a terminal illness. So, like, yeah, it just struck way too hard there. So I'll pass it over to you before I start crying. Berto,
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
look,
mm.
yeah, you go. You ask questions. I'm just
Well,
trying to
I was
take it
gonna
away
say,
from you.
like, Dawn is a character that, like, I don't know, like, I feel like we didn't see that much of her. So it was hard to, like, know who she was. Um, so yeah, like, even
Uh,
though I didn't get that much of a connection with her compared to the other characters, um, I obviously felt things for other reasons. How did you feel about Dawn overall?
I I I I didn't really see her, right, the first time I played. So like my most memorable moments were the baby and Lewis, right? Gregory,
Hmm.
was it? The baby and
Yeah.
but the second time I played, so 5 years now, my perspective and change, and I look at video games very differently now, a little bit more critically, I would say. And as I was playing it, I've come to kind of like realize that I think she was the one that actually wanted to break the curse
Mm.
by removing herself entirely from it. Because when you look at it, like she was there when, is it the dad that passed out, like the one that got hit
Yeah.
by the deer? Yep. So like she didn't want it. Like the whole time in that whole story, she didn't want to be there. She didn't want to do that. She didn't want to do any of that. And she's always saying that in everything. She left to go to India, didn't she? Like she lived, in my
Her
opinion, a lot
her
more.
part
Yeah,
her partner was from India. They ended up going
yeah.
there.
She was also with the whole Christianity, right? So like, I think she was the one that understood and recognized that the only way forward is to leave.
Mm.
And I think it's unfortunate the way that she passed, and it is sad because it is essentially three frames, right? The car, the little flower, and then the hospital. And if you notice it, like thematically and gameplay wise, it's only the hand. You only control the hand throughout all three. That's about it. In my opinion, she was the one that broke the generational curse in inverted commas, because the
Mm.
way that she understood and recognized it was she was put in uncomfortable positions by her family, who were extraordinarily just bad, not bad people, but just so unsafe. So
Yeah.
they did not take life as seriously. Like, they lived life to the fullest, but they were just so reckless, so careless. And I think her leaving and falling in love outside, and her Christianity being hidden, and all that. Like, I think she was the one that was truly trying to find meaning and understanding and purpose within herself to leave this family and this issues that were plaguing them. I think she was
Mm.
the first one that understood it. And I think that's what I took away the second time that I was playing. Because the first time, obviously, you don't really think much of it. But the second time, I'm like, oh, she's the one that wants to break it. You know how people always say there's generational curses. Eventually, someone
Yeah.
has to break it. I think
Yeah.
she's the one, right? And from a gameplay perspective, what I mentioned, and I'm sorry for repeating myself a little bit, but like the way that she passed was only in 3 frames, and it was all to do.
Mm.
You only control the hand. That's all you
Mm.
did. You didn't see anything. You didn't notice anything, and it was so powerful within 3 frames. The car, the flower, and the hospital. But I'll pass it over to Jamie.
I think a lot. You've covered a lot of my opinions on how I feel about Dawn in general. I think a lot of the opinions I have that are different just sort of lean into the curse in general. So I might hold those off until we actually talk about what we think of the curse. But I do agree, she was one of these ones that I think Edie herself had been so lost in almost trying to make a profound reasoning as to um, simply deaths occurring and just creating these outlandish stories to make them almost seem more, not, how do I say this, more wonderful and more memorable than they really were. And
Mm.
they were just a sequence of unfortunate, or in on some occasions just pure stupid events. So I feel like Dawn saw that happening, getting lost in her own sort of, we don't know what she is, but you could say that maybe she had her own sort of either dementia or mental health aspects herself, where she was lost. You can only be locked in a house that's full of rooms that are all dedicated to your deceased family members for so long before you must, once again, like with Walter, like, where does your grip on reality begin and end
Mm.
when you're just surrounded by these things? Um, so I do think, yeah, she just finally had enough and was like, you know what, I don't believe in the curse. I think we just need to get away from this, because I think it's doing more damage to Edith than it probably needs to by hearing these things. So yeah, I'm probably going to repeat myself during the curse section, but
Mm.
yeah, I think it's a lot of that. I feel.
Yeah. And like she was probably the only one that survived long enough to break the curse, because almost everyone else died as kids. So,
Mm.
um, I mean, obviously there were a few adults in there, but most of the family died as children. So, um, yeah. We will get on to the last character, and that is Edith Finch herself. The game ends with Edith giving birth to her son, and it somewhat implies that she died during childbirth. So, um, and obviously, the story itself is told as a letter to her son as well. So,
Mm.
Mm.
what did you think of the ending?
Yeah, I forgot how it ended
Mm.
completely. I completely forgot that at the beginning you're not you're actually the son. I completely forgot about that. I was like, oh, it like goes around, it goes all the way around, full
Mm.
circle. Think it's sad I felt sad that she had passed this way, but then I was like, but you just experienced the whole game as her. That was her diary, was the experiences of everyone else, right? So it's
Mm.
like books within books within books.
Inception.
Um,
Mm.
Pretty much. I also, now talking to you guys, my mind's like expanding slowly. Um, but I noticed just then that they're the last two are the deaths that are the most normal.
Yeah, they are. They're
One
more
by the
natural.
bedside, and
Mm.
correct. There are no fantastical stories. There are no eagles and fucking starships and aliens, and like there is no fantastical storytelling here. And I think now that I'm talking to you guys, I think that I might be right with my theory about the curse. That I think that Dawn was the beginning of the end. And unfortunately, there was a disease, and unfortunately, she gave birth and passed away. It was like bittersweet and sad, but also beautiful, like to have her son come back and put flowers there. But I wish it
Mm.
wasn't there because that house is just so weird. But we'll talk
Cursed.
about that in a second, I suppose. Oh, the whole time I was going through, I was like, how did you get council approval? Like, that's a fire hazard.
Yeah,
How do you do
literally.
that? Like how much is your mortgage, bro? Like, come on.
All right, Jamie, what did you think of Edith's death?
I think to steal Birdo's word again, bittersweet.
Mm.
I think it's such a when I first played it, it hit quite hard because you sort of just assume that you're playing as Edith throughout the whole thing, but then you realize you're just experiencing the story from her perspective, and then when it like you find out and that shoe drops and you realize, oh, she's not even with us either.
Mm.
It does hit home quite hard, I think. And leaning into, obviously, we're going to be getting into the curse into a second, but leaning into that, like the fantastical elements, they all vanish once Edie goes. Like once she's no longer involved, it is just a standard death for
Mm.
both these characters. You know what I mean? Um, so I think the outlandish nature of the majority of them, I do think, are the ones that she's been involved with the most, and sort of, as I said just before, almost trying to make something profound and memorable of these deaths. And it really does make you then figure, like, sort of end up considering, like, how even close to these to the truth are they? Like, you really don't know. You just have to take Edie's word for what she's actually the tombs that she's put together for the family. So I think that's why it's so touching and really memorable, the entire experience, because you can have so many different opinions and viewpoints and understandings of the exact same things, because there is no definitive this or that. It is very much open to interpretation. And I think that's what I really appreciate about this entire experience.
Yeah, it really like prompts discussion. I love games like that. Even like the end of Firewatch, for example, like there's a lot of theories on like what happened there. That's for another spoiler cast though.
That's for another one.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Can't wait for that one.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The curse. I would like to hear from you two first because obviously I've only had the one playthrough and like
Mm.
3 days to process it, where you guys have a few years on me. So um I'm really keen to hear your thoughts, Jamie.
I think I've alluded to it a few times now. I don't believe the curse was a real thing at all. I
Mm.
think it was potentially a family that had embraced this idea that the curse was real, almost to the point that they were doing such stupid things half the time because they were just like, oh, well, we're going to die anyways. It was almost this carefree nature, almost gave them this sense of invulnerability that, like, oh, we're going to die anyways, doesn't matter. And they just do so many dumb things. And like I said, it sort of circles back to Edie creating these outlandish stories, almost not to hide the stupidity, but to sort of um, try to make a big event out of all these deaths. When, like, if we're just talking about the themes of death. This is something we all will experience at one point. And I think she's just been lost with her thoughts for so long within the house that she's leaned into this curse that, Odin also thought of. They went to move the entire house. Like, that's normal. Just because you think that there's a curse happening. And yeah, I've never believed that there was one throughout my multiple playthroughs, and I just think it. I think it is stories that have just been created by Edie, really to sort of almost make them seem like that they had a purpose within the death itself, and yeah, I just think almost that carefree nature has just given the Finch family reason to do really stupid stuff. Like the Gregory in the bathtub was just neglectful parents. Another one had got lost in his own mental health issues. And then like it just seemed Barbara, like we can only assume from the knowledge we have that she was just unfortunately murdered in her own house. And the only one that really knows is I believe, was it Walter that was hiding under the bed, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once again, he locks himself away for however long, and again, the only real narrative storyteller we have to believe is Edie. So you have to just take almost everything with a grain of salt. But I think, like I said, that's what's so great about it, because I've stumbled upon so many Reddit threads over the years discussing the curse and whether it's a thing, and some people are just like, "Oh yeah, it's a curse," but then you dive deeper, and it's like, "Is it?"
Yeah.
So yeah, me personally, I don't think it is. I think as you were mentioning earlier, Brad, about people just doing things they love, I think they just became sort of almost oblivious to death because they were around Edie, who kept just saying, well, we're all cursed to die. We're going to die anyways. And I think they just sort of got a little bit more too carefree, started doing too much stupid shit.
So I'm pretty sure I clocked on very early on my playthrough. Like when the curse kept getting mentioned, I was like, well, yeah, bad stuff is going to happen if you keep manifesting it. Like, it's not a like I was like, obviously, curses in general. I'm just very speculative about that. But yeah, I think at face value, this game does not go down a straight line of how it tells stories. So, like, why would the curse be a curse, right? I don't think I don't think almost anything that it throws at you is what it is. Like, that would be like, why would everything leading up to the ending of the game like be so abstract, and then it's just, oh yeah, it was a curse. Like, I just don't think I don't think the devs would just like, they want people to talk about this. They want people to find different explanations of these series of deaths, and like, just judging off our conversations today, there obviously is many different interpretations on what this curse is. Is the curse real? Is the curse mental health? Is the curse just a fabrication of what Edie wants her family to, I guess, live their life in a way that's not sheltered, because it's not even sheltered because they are reckless. So like, I don't know. I don't know what Edie, like, how does it represent? It's just like confusing because like Edie literally lived till she was 93. So like, I don't know if there was a curse, like she should be dead. Like should have died earlier. I don't know. That's what I think. But Berto, you mentioned the curse was like mental health based. Did you want to elaborate on that a bit more?
I'm making it up as I'm going in this spoiler
That's all
cast.
right. So am
So
I.
so what so what people are seeing is me trying to come up with what I believe it to be, because outright there is no curse. You are
Mm,
what you believe you are.
mm,
And I'm a very spiritual person, right? And manifestation and all these things, I get it. And I think this person manifested something. The curse is relevancy, really. It's to remain relevant to someone, to something in the family. It's almost like you needed something of an exit plan of your life in order to be part of this curse narrative. And eventually the head of the family, right? When you think about it, she was left alone to influence her children, to influence their children, until the influence and the relevancy was gone, and they decided, you know what, you're wrong. Like even in the scene at the end where the mum's like, your um, your stories is the problem. Like you're the problem, basically. You
mm.
know, like that's the problem, not the problems. You're the problem. The mental health stuff, I guess, what I thought about it was because mentally, and I'll probably retract the statement of it's a mental health issue, but they all believe it because they've been sold this idea, this concept that I am, therefore I will always be, which is bullshit, really. You are what you believe, and what you'll always be that. If you believe you can't do it, you'll always fail. If you believe you're going to succeed, you will succeed. It's just
Yeah,
success might look a little bit differently.
I
And
agree.
so um, there are obviously, in my mind, as someone who is a very spiritual person, like uh, there are things that go against this thinking, and you see it at the end. And it is it's the disease that the mum had.
Mm,
That's not what you wanted. It's just is.
yeah,
The giving birth and passing out. That's not what you wanted. That just is, right? Whereas every other death was what, like you said, it was what they wanted, because that's what they wanted to do. Yeah,
yeah,
as I'm talking to you, it's kind of coming out a little bit more clearer, as weird as it sounds. But I think the curse is just a fancy way of saying, let's keep the Finch name alive and relevant, because my husband decided to bring, or
mm.
my father decided to bring the
Odin.
house over. Yeah,
Yeah.
like what a fantastical story. Well, let's build something on that.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Mm.
I will even say my perception of the events in the game have changed just talking to you guys for the last hour and a half. Like, as I said, I have only had a few days to process it, so
Mm.
my thoughts are like a lot different. Like, I'm already excited to play through this again, like to pick up more
Mm.
things. Um,
Yeah.
all right. So, we will wrap it up. Do we want to like just give our overall feelings, or like how you feel about this game in a couple of sentences? Uh well, I'll go first. So yeah, as I said, like I went into this with a blank slate. I had no idea what this game was about. And its impression, as you can tell over this spoiler cast, um, has been a powerful one that I wasn't expecting. Like, I have played lots of just story heavy games, but like, there are still just the way What Remains of Edith Finch does, how it presents the stories, how it, so overall art direction and game direction together. This is
Mm.
probably one of my most favorite um, story games I think I've ever played. Like, as far as these types of games go. Like, it is. I love a game that promotes discussion, promotes like fan theories. Like, I know it's late, but maybe tomorrow I'll go surf Reddit for even more fan theories that I wouldn't have even thought of. So, um, yeah, this game's going to be one that sticks with me for a very, very long time. Jamie.
I think, like, just with the themes of death in general, leaning back into what I was saying before, Edie trying to find a reason or like a why it occurred and sort of creating these stories. And we as players experience these stories, but then we can also have our own versions of what we believe actually happened. And like you said, like, I've never discussed the game as in depth as I have with you guys now. And I've heard so many theories I never even considered. Like, personally, I love when Birdo was talking about the cannery and how you see video games almost evolve alongside his
Mm,
imagination. Um, and I never even considered that. So, like, there's so many elements that I really appreciate in this game. And, like, I know it's a debate that's been going on for decades of like video games arts and all this sort of stuff. Like, they are like, it is an artwork that people create, but in terms of like a piece of art or a work of art, whenever people make that argument, oh, video games aren't like that, like, this is the epitome, I think, of a game that is a work of art. Like, we've
mm,
been able to talk about it for almost the same length that the game runs, and I feel like we could talk
yeah.
about it for another
Yeah.
hour and a half on top
Yeah.
without any problems, because there's so much profound intricacies to the story that it's telling. And I don't think this is one of those stories that you could not have in any other medium. Like, watching it as just a film or a TV series or reading it as just a book with your own imagination is one thing, but being able to interact with these stories and then leaving with your own perspective on and what you got out of it is just, I find it so moving. And like, this entire game is just so special to me. So I'm so glad that I've had an excuse to go back to replay it and hear fresh perspectives that maybe I hadn't considered previously. And yeah, for some reason, if you haven't played this game, it's not long. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Mm,
It's so special, and I really encourage everyone to play it.
for sure. Beto, your
Yeah,
lasting thoughts?
I think 5 years on from the original, it still is a beautiful game. It made me more depressed than I remembered, and I think that comes from my experiences now as a father. I think that changed me. Um, Obviously, it should, um, but coming back to it, replaying it, like the originality in it is still phenomenal. Like I haven't played a game like this. I miss games like these. Like I don't know
There's
why we don't see them
there's like
often.
nothing like it, is there?
That's
No.
what irks me. Like, you know, you mentioned Firewatch. When we talk about that, that's going to be 5 hours long. But like
Yeah. The,
games like that have a certain pace and a certain purpose, and it moves exactly as it should to present its story. It's more of an experience than a game, and
mm,
I'm quite grateful to experience it. I think everyone should. Um, I think it's one of those, for me, an almost faultless experience. I mean, frustrations with the controllers are very, the controls. It's annoying, but it's a small little thing to bypass considering the bigger picture.
yeah.
But yeah, I think 5 years on, not touched it, never even looked into it until we all decided to play it, and I'm just like, man, I'll play this again in 5 years, and I hope it still has the same impact. But it's amazing that they haven't worked on anything yet. The developers, I
Yeah.
hope they work on something else. But man, it really makes me appreciate this medium a lot, because, like James said, I don't think any other place could make you feel and do what you did like this. There is no other medium that does it.
No, and like storytelling like this, it's a gift. Like not everyone has it, I believe. Like
Yeah.
that's why we don't see many games like this. Yeah, it's a special talent that like feels like it's wasted if they don't do anything else. So please make another game. But yes, that is the end of the spoiler cast. Thank you for watching this episode of the Next Play spoiler cast. Feel free to leave a comment below about your time with What Remains of Edith Finch, and don't forget to like and subscribe as well. I've been your host, Brad, and you can find me everywhere at Brad_EXP or on Blue Sky, Brad Goodwin. And joining me today has been Jamie.
You can follow me on Instagram at JamieX66, and you should also see a What Remains of Edith Finch article on the website as well. If you've gone this
Yes.
far, it should be live now.
Yes. And Berto.
You can find me on Instagram as pause_gamer.
Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next spoiler cast.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.